In 2014, GoPro was the coolest tech company on planet Earth. When they went public on the Nasdaq, their stock skyrocketed, quickly driving the company to a massive $10 billion valuation. Their tiny, cube-shaped action cameras were an absolute global sensation, capturing everything from deep-sea scuba dives to supersonic skydives from the edge of space. GoPro wasn't just selling a camera, they were selling adrenaline. Their YouTube channel was a media powerhouse, pulling in billions of views and redefining user-generated content for a generation. But if you fast forward just a few years, the picture looks completely different. The stock collapsed by over 90% from its historic highs. The company faced massive layoffs, cancelled major projects, pulled out of entire industries, and watched its multi-billion-dollar valuation evaporate. But GoPro wasn't beaten by a smarter tech giant, and they didn't suffer a drop in build quality. In fact, they suffered from the exact opposite. They fell victim to one of the rarest and most brutal traps in business history. They built a product that was too good. This is the story of the hardware limitation trap, how making an indestructible camera accidentally broke GoPro's economic model, and how a desperate, multi-million-dollar scramble to pivot into software and media exposed the limits of a one-hit wonder tech empire. Chapter 2. The Action Revolution. GoPro was born out of pure frustration. In 2002, an avid surfer named Woodman went on a surfing trip to Australia and Indonesia. He wanted to capture high-quality action photos of his waves, but discovered that amateur photographers couldn't get close enough, and professional equipment was too expensive and clunky. He realized the world needed a camera that could be strapped directly to the human body. Woodman started the company by selling wrist straps made from old wetsuits and plastic scraps. But by the late 2000s and early 2010s, GoPro transitioned into digital video hardware with the Hero lineup. The strategy was brilliant. They didn't try to compete with heavy DSLR giants like Canon or Sony, and they didn't try to compete with early smartphones. They built a hyper-specific, rugged, waterproof niche that no one else was touching. And it exploded. Skateboarders, skydivers, skiers, and everyday travelers strapped GoPros to their helmets, surfboards, and chests. The hardware became a status symbol. If you had a GoPro attached to your gear, it meant your life was an adventure. By the time of their IPO in 2014, GoPro was shipping millions of units a year. Woodman became an overnight billionaire, and the company looked completely unstoppable. But beneath that mountain of cash, a structural nightmare was quietly taking shape. Chapter 3. The Indestructible Trap. To understand GoPro's downfall, you have to look at the economic reality of modern consumer tech hardware. Companies like Apple or Samsung rely on an ongoing upgrade cycle. They build smartphones with glass screens that crack, batteries that slowly degrade after 24 months, and internal chips that require software updates that eventually slow down older models. They subtly force consumers to buy a new device every 2 to 3 years. But GoPro didn't do that. They designed their cameras to survive being dropped from airplanes, run over by trucks, submerged in frozen lakes, and chewed on by sharks. The outer shells were industrial grade, the lenses were intensely durable, and the software was incredibly simple. And that became their ultimate corporate curse. Once a casual consumer bought a GoPro Hero 3 or Hero 4 for their summer vacation, that camera lasted. It sat in their drawer, perfectly functional, year after year. When GoPro released the Hero 5 or Hero 6, the everyday user looked at their existing camera and asked a logical question. Why should I upgrade? My current GoPro is already indestructible, records in high definition, and still works perfectly. GoPro had saturated their core market of extreme sports athletes, and the mainstream casual market had zero incentive to participate in an annual upgrade cycle. Sales slammed into a wall. GoPro was spending millions on research and development to build next-generation cameras, but their existing customers simply didn't need them. Chapter 4. The Smartphone Evolution. While GoPro was struggling to convince existing users to upgrade, the broader technology market shifted violently against them. The smartphone camera revolution exploded. Apple, Samsung, and Google began dedicating billions to computational photography. Within a few short generations, smartphones introduced multi-lens systems, advanced optical image stabilization, waterproof bodies, and instant cloud sharing. Suddenly, the casual traveler or weekend hiker no longer needed to carry a separate, specialized cube camera. Their phone, which was already in their pocket, could record stunning 4K video, survive a splash of water, and post the footage directly to Instagram or TikTok in 3 seconds. GoPro's addressable market shrunk drastically overnight. They were pulled out of the mass consumer mainstream and pushed right back into their original, limited niche of hardcore extreme sports enthusiasts. Realizing that their hardware model was fundamentally broken, GoPro leadership panicked. They knew they needed a new source of recurring revenue, and their solution was to stop acting like a camera company and start acting like a media empire. Chapter 5. The Failed Media Pivot. The boardroom theory was highly ambitious. Executives looked at GoPro's massive social media footprint and argued that the company shouldn't just be valued on hardware sales. They wanted to turn GoPro into an entertainment network. They hired high-profile media executives, built a massive content division, and poured millions into producing original lifestyle shows, documentaries, and travel content. The plan was to monetize this user-generated media ecosystem through advertising, syndication deals, and content partnerships. But the media pivot was a catastrophic miscalculation. Producing premium media is an incredibly expensive, low-margin business that requires a totally different operational DNA than manufacturing physical electronics. Consumers loved watching GoPro's wild YouTube videos for free, but they had absolutely zero desire to view GoPro-branded television networks or pay for premium content subscriptions. The media division burned through hundreds of millions of dollars in venture cash without generating any meaningful revenue streams. By 2016, realizing the bleeding was critical, GoPro was forced to shut down the entire entertainment arm, execute massive rounds of employee layoffs, and admit to Wall Street that the media dream was dead. Chapter 6. The Karma Catastrophe. Desperate to find a new hardware frontier to boost sales, GoPro made a bold bet on the next big tech trend: consumer drones. In late 2016, they launched the GoPro Karma, a sleek, foldable quadcopter designed to carry their cameras into the sky. It was supposed to be the ultimate growth engine that would save the company's hardware division. But the launch turned into an absolute operational nightmare. Just days after hitting the market, users reported that the Karma drone suffered from a severe power failure defect that caused it to completely lose power mid-air and fall directly out of the sky like a stone. GoPro was forced to announce an emergency, highly public global recall of every single drone they had sold. The optics were humiliating for a brand built entirely on reliability and extreme performance. Worse, while GoPro was busy managing the recall and fixing their engineering flaws, a Chinese drone company named DJI systematically captured the entire market. DJI iterated faster, built more reliable technology, and completely locked down consumer drones before GoPro could even re-release their product. GoPro abandoned the drone industry entirely, absorbing a massive financial loss. Chapter 7. The Slow Calibration. By the late 2000s and early 2020s, GoPro had to accept a painful reality. They were never going to be a $10 billion tech giant. They underwent a massive, painful structural downsize. They stopped chasing media networks, cancelled experimental hardware, and refocused entirely on their core, profitable action camera community. They launched a highly disciplined subscription service, GoPro Subscription, offering users cloud storage, camera replacement guarantees, and discounts for a recurring annual fee. This finally gave the company the predictable, subscription-based software revenue they had lacked for a decade. GoPro survived the crisis. They are still a profitable business today, and they still build the undisputed best action cameras on Earth. Chapter 8. The Core Lesson. GoPro didn't struggle because their management was lazy or because their technology failed. They struggled because they forgot that a business model requires balance between the durability of a product and the frequency of a purchase. If you build hardware that is truly indestructible, you cannot survive on sales alone unless you continuously expand your user base or build a strong software ecosystem alongside it. By the time GoPro realized they had saturated their market, they rushed into expensive software, media, and drone sectors they didn't understand, compounding their exposure. The ultimate lesson of GoPro is that winning a category is only half the battle. You have to win the long-term economics of that category. If you build a product so perfect that your customers never need to buy from you again, you haven't just beaten your competitors. You might have accidentally beaten your own business. If you found this deep dive into consumer hardware strategy and corporate pivots valuable, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. We track the high-stakes decisions, hidden monopolies, and sudden downfalls of the world's most recognizable tech empires. Drop a comment below. Do you still own an old GoPro that works perfectly, or have you switched completely to your smartphone for action video?